Hello everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button and turn that notification bell on so you know whenever I'm posting my next video. So today's video, I wanted to talk about someone that kind of meant something to me, mainly because he helped me out in a situation where he really didn't have to. And I think that that is something that a lot of people in the LGBT community experience when they kind of are growing up, and maybe you're a guy that's a little bit more feminine and people kind of pick up on the fact that you're different than them. And maybe you're a girl who might be a little bit more masculine, or maybe you're just someone somewhere in the middle and you just don't fit into the normal category and people have picked on you. I personally have dealt with it so many different times in my lifetime, but I wanted to kind of dedicate this YouTube video to a specific person because it was a very interesting story and I thought that it would be fun to share. So for those of you that know, I went to college in West Virginia, and West Virginia is not one of the most open-minded states, but usually you'll find that on college campuses, people have a little bit more open-minded opinions about the LGBT community. But you still run into the occasional people with closed minds and conservative views. So for me, I went to Fairmont State University. I took some classes at WVU. Morgantown, West Virginia was kind of where I became comfortable with being part of the LGBT community. I kind of formed a group of friends that were kind of part of the LGBT community. We had themed parties. We'd go out to the club afterwards. And that was kind of where I learned what it meant to be part of the community and kind of made a lot of friends along the way. But that doesn't mean that there weren't challenges along the way as well. So for me, I generally felt pretty safe when it came to hanging out with my LGBT friends, and when it came to going out to the gay club, which was called Vice Versa at the time, the parking garage was like right across the street. So it was pretty easy to kind of get in your car, go to the parking garage and walk to the bar. There were some instances that popped up over time. I was there for a couple years, so of course, nothing runs perfectly, but for the most part, it was pretty safe. And I felt very safe with my friends because I never really went by myself. Anytime I arrived, I was at least with my boyfriend or my friends when we were going out to the club. So for the most part, I never really felt unsafe. But when you live in the middle of a state that has very conservative views, of course you run into locals that don't have the same opinions as the people who are accepting of you on the college campuses. I personally never had a bad experience personally at the gay club, but I did see when like straight guys came into the club and got drunk and just had to show off their masculinity by being a douchebag and doing stupid things to gay people. And thankfully we were able to get them out of the club very quickly. But this one time, which is where my story comes from for this YouTube video, one of my friends who was a sorority girl wanted to go to a party that wasn't LGBT at all. It was kind of a frat party. She was part of a sorority and she didn't want to go alone, but she was talking to this guy that she really liked and she invited me to go with her. I personally wasn't very comfortable because I don't really like being around people when alcohol is involved, especially when it's not like LGBT friendly and I know ahead of time that I'm going to have like some safety precautions set up in case someone decides to do something stupid. So I decided to go to this party with her because I wanted to be a good friend, and I do believe in giving people grace, and I do believe in, you know what, giving someone a chance to prove me wrong when it comes to the closed-mindedness that exists in the world. And unfortunately, that night was not that night, and I had to experience what it felt like to be one of the only LGBT people in the room and have some drunk asshole decide that I was going to be the victim of his hate that night. And honestly, this is the reason why I fight so hard for LGBT equality, because never should someone in our community feel so out of place when they go to a place like this. And I made sure that I dressed down. I made sure that I didn't really stand out in any way. I was just wearing a jeans and a t-shirt so that I wouldn't be like instantly pegged as the gay person in the room. But of course, like gays have mannerisms, and my voice isn't super low. Maybe it's a little low right now because I'm still kind of healing from my sinus infection or whatever I have. But I think that it's pretty easy to peg me in the crowd, especially when you're standing around a bunch of redneck guys who are very masculine. That night, someone decided that I was going to be the prey for their hate, and it was very awkward because no one really stood up for me at first. Like, I was kind of standing there and this guy was just screaming faggot and a lot of other things, and he kind of pushed me, and I just was like, hey, like, I'm not looking for any trouble, like, I can leave. And he was just like, you shouldn't have come here in the first place, faggot, and he like pushed me down to the floor. And in that moment, that was really scary because you're seeing that you're surrounded by so many different people and you've got this guy like pushing you down to the ground, yet no one is stopping him from doing that. Like, you are sitting there like wondering why no one is helping you out. And that's one of the reasons why I try to kind of stay super far away from things that aren't like right up in your face LGBT friendly, because stupid moments like this can happen. And then he started to kind of kick me once I was down on the ground, and I was just like, dear Lord, this is not what I wanted to be dealing with tonight. I should have just gone with my friends to the club in Morgantown instead of the stupid house party here in Fairmont. But I was trying to be a supportive friend, and at that moment when the guy had kind of kicked me in my stomach, which really sucked, this guy out of nowhere just came and like pushed the guy off of me, and he was like, dude, get off of him. He helped me up. And then like at that time, of course, I was like crying and not really in a great headspace. I personally was not drinking that night, so I felt and remembered everything that night, just because I don't like making myself more vulnerable in those types of situations, and alcohol and stuff like that tends to make you more vulnerable. So I wanted to make sure that I was in a good headspace. So I remembered all of this, and he helped me up and walked me out to the porch and was apologizing for the people in there. He was an extremely nice guy. He introduced himself to me, but at that moment, I really just wanted to leave the party. I didn't even care about trying to find my friend because she was so wrapped up in the guy that she was going to the party for in the first place, and she had been drinking and everyone else had been drinking. Thankfully, the campus wasn't too far away, so I was able to walk back to campus, which probably wasn't the safe thing to do looking back on it, but honestly, got back safely and I'm still here today, so it was perfectly okay at that moment. But it was very interesting because he introduced himself with his first name, so I didn't really know anything else about him. I'd never really seen him before, but then later on, probably a couple months down the road, I was at a hair salon where this hairstylist was a photographer and a hairstylist, and he had this picture on his wall of the guy that actually like helped me out. I was like, oh my God, that's the guy that like helped me out at this house party that someone was like attacking me for being gay. And the hairstylist was like, oh, that's David. And I was like, yeah, he told me his name. And at that point, I was just like, well, super straight guy. Thankful that he helped me out, but I'm not going to do any more investigation. It wasn't until probably several years later that I kind of reached back out to the hairstylist. His name was Nico. And I was just like, hey, how have you been doing? And I saw that he still kind of had pictures of David up on his website. I was like, you know what? I'm going to just check in and see how David's doing. And come to find out, David had moved to Texas and also came out, and he was dating this guy on a horse ranch down there. And honestly, it's so amazing to like kind of look back, because at the time he was definitely not out of the closet, and he still put himself out there to help another person in the LGBT community. Even though he had not come out yet, he was still there to defend someone that was in a very unsafe situation. And it really meant the world to me that he kind of stepped out of that comfort zone to help me out, because in this day and age, we know that when a straight person helps a gay person, that puts them in line for all the hate that's usually placed on us. they also get that. And then of course, other straight guys are like, oh, well, are you a faggot too? So I know that he kind of put himself out there to help me out that night, and I really appreciated it. So I reconnected with him on Facebook and was just kind of saying, hey, I don't know if you remember this or not. And of course he didn't, because he was also intoxicated that night. But I was just like, I just want to say thank you for doing that, because it meant the world to me at that moment when I was scared out of my mind, that someone stepped up and helped me in that moment. So I thought it was really cool that he did that. I thought it was really nice that we were able to reconnect. And of course, we've had a lot of really great conversations since then. I think that it's really great to be able to reconnect with people in that way. But I thought that that was a fun story to kind of share here on my YouTube channel. Hopefully all of you out there, if you've ever been in a situation like that one, had some type of hero that stepped up and helped you out. I think that that is so important, whether it's an ally or someone else in the LGBT community. I think it's so important to have people there to kind of help us through those moments that are so extremely scary. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Like always, feel free to leave some comments in the comment section below, and make sure you check me out on all my other social medias, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.